we're gonna get started. We do not have a mic, so everyone's just gonna be kind of shouting. So please try your best to respect whoever the presenter is. I'm gonna run through some announcements real quick. If anyone has any general community announcements, any job postings, games coming out that you're excited about, feel free to line up over here. Sweet. As another quick public service thing, we, as our after party, we're going to be heading over to Brick and Mortar. It's like 2 blocks down, fun little bar. Unsure if the kitchen will be open. We'll find out. For other events going on in the community, we've got Game Audio Boston coming up. I think on next Tuesday. Optimizer Sound Design with Greg Lester. It's an online event. Demo nights next month. That'll be over in the open space, August 13th. We have our normal Friday morning coffee hour every Friday morning, 8:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Super fun to join and online, so super easy to join too. Boston Game Loop is coming up August 16th. If you guys haven't been, it's a user-generated conference. If you don't know what that means, go and find out. It's really cool. I'll give the floor to community stuff.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Chris. I'm the president of Boston Game Dev. We're the sort of like financial. What's up?
President.
Yeah. I'm in charge. I'm the king here. What was I saying? So we're the sort of like financial parent of Boston Indies and Boston Postmortem and the other meetups around here. We have to pay our dues to meetup.com this month, so we need a little money. If folks have a good time tonight, if people are coming out to other community stuff and want to support us, you can go to bostongamedev.org/donate and kick in a couple bucks. It helps us out. I don't know. That's really it. That's all I got. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, hey folks, I'm Chris. So last year one of my Game Loop talks was about the Bob Ross approach to game making. Some of y'all know if you're home team game dev, we're rebranding and pivoting that into DevPods, which is more the Bob Ross energy. So if you know some friends who are just more for like making games because it's fun, it's enriching, it's creative, it's playful, and a little less industry focused, send them my way or let's chat. That's it.
Sweet. All right. Well, if we got no more community announcements, I think we can start with our first talk from Shane. Sweet. What?
There's a Slack channel. It's DevPods.
I did not mention Slack channel. I lied. We have one more announcement. If anyone in here, for any of the new folks around here, isn't in the Boston Game Dev Slack, it's super resourceful, like tons of great people in there, super great way to stay connected, and that's where our coffee hour links are being posted these days. Additionally, we have all the Boston Game Dev, Boston Indies socials. I think we're mostly on Blue Sky, Instagram-ish these days, so follow us there. There we go.
There we go.
Now we're chilling. Cool.
Alrighty.
So sorry.
Hi, I'm Shane, and I make video games. And I feel like I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but making games is hard. Who'da thunk? So I've been making games since I graduated from college back in 2017, just kind of mostly as a hobby. If you count doing levels for other games, shout outs to people that made levels for Half-Life 2, by the way. Yeah, we got somebody. So I've been fascinated by games. I come from a background of more creative work. So whereas a lot of people go into games from a tech background and then kind of learn creativity from that, I kind of came from creativity and learned tech from that. So bit of an interesting perspective. Speaking of perspective, my first game was a game called Swap, and this was the game that I did to kind of teach myself Unity, because I had this idea for a game where it was kind of perspective bending. And I looked around, and while there were some games that kind of did that, like Super Paper Mario, Fez, some other games probably, I was like, yeah, but they're not quite doing what I have in my brain. Oh my God, literally nobody else will make this game if I don't. So it's been something that I have been thinking about basically every day since 2018, and yeah, as you can see, it is nowhere near complete due to, say it with me folks, scope creep, that's right. So, not great. So what's going wrong? So like it says, life kind of gets in the way. There's a lot of things that we do when, we're not doing this as our day job. And the most productive I ever was I'm sure any other hobbyist can relate to this, was during COVID when everybody was stuck in their houses. And that's just kind of how my hobbies manifested. Thank God I had something to do. But unfortunately, once we kind of, slowly crawled back into the waking world, I wasn't able to kind of keep up with it quite as much as I would have liked. My Unity muscles kind of atrophied, since, there's not, I'm just kind of making this on my own time. I don't have any investors or anything. I didn't make a Kickstarter or anything for this game. Maybe one day, though. No real deadlines, no real pressure, and I still think about it every day. And yet here I am, since 2018, talking about it instead of actually making it. I'm a fake. I'm a hack. I'm a fraud. I probably got to start this whole presentation over, you guys. Hi, I'm Shane, and I don't make video games. If only there was some kind of organization to kind of motivate me a little bit more. Maybe not a full-fledged, multi-year release, but I've tried game jams, but those are just stressful, and my weekends are usually busy. If only there was some kind of organization. Enter Tiny Mass Games. Now, I'm just somebody who, joined halfway through one of their seasons more recently. They're a local group dedicated to small games released quarterly, so every 3 months. Some examples include Million Monster Militia, The Only Tower, and Mr. Magpie's Harmless Card Game, which Markiplier played. So these are like actual games that are being made. So I was like, all right, clearly these guys get results, however they run their organization. So what the heck, why not throw my hat into the ring? So I've worked on a couple of games, the first one being The Manor on 16th Street by 9th Avenue, and my current project, Death in D Minor, both of which I'm going to go over right now. Hello, I said go over right now. There we go, thank you. So every single season, every 3 months, they do a different theme. And the theme for this one was 16 by 9, where you literally only have 16 by 9 pixels to work with. And I was like, wow, that's a very strict visual perspective, visual restriction, I should say. Are there any audio restrictions? And they were like, no. And I was like, really? So I decided to use my theater background and create a fully fledged, fully voice acted murder mystery thriller where we have to figure out who killed Mr. Green over here. And also, I need to give a shout out to Noah Beasley. I don't think she is here tonight, but she made the music. She works at Berkeley, and she is phenomenal when it comes to making music. And it really sold the whole, detective thriller thing where it was like, oh, you see a lot of things in my line of work. And then, the slow piano slowly coming in. It's a masterpiece. And this is my current game that I'm working on called Death in D Minor. Raise your hand if you've ever even heard of the game The Case of the Golden Idol. Okay, so yes, so a lot of you, this will look very familiar where you kind of have your word bank and you have to figure out, using the words down here, fill in the blank of, all right, who is this guy? Why did he get squished by a piano? Who would have the motivation to do that? Just because the guys that made Golden Idol released their second game in the series recently, and I have not stopped thinking about that game just because I love it that much. And again, I have to give a shout out to my friend, the Chi Draws, just goes by Chi for the art. Because as I was doing the programmer art, which I neglected to put in here, she was like, hey, what if they were all rats? And I was like, oh my God, Chi, you're a genius. So we've been working on that, but not all is well. Unfortunately, there were some development issues with this game that I didn't quite have to deal with as much with Manor on 16th Street by 9th Avenue. This was a little bit more of a complicated game. There's more people involved. And there's a lot more, I didn't realize how much my muscles in Unity had atrophied. It was able to get me through the first game, but I realized the night before we were supposed to submit this back at the top of June, that, oh my God, the word bank from before, that did not function. That was basically a PNG for a long time. And I was like, oh, oh no, and like words weren't sticking in there when they should be, and like the art wasn't done, and I was like, oh my god, what do I do? Oh no, I need more time. And now we go back into the same, anxieties that were swimming around my brain with Swap, where it's like, oh, great. This game is going to be perpetually delayed. Is this just going to get stuck in development hell? Is this Swap all over again? No, not actually. Calm down. Because the nice thing about Tiny Mask games is that their games are released quarterly, so if you miss one, you just get on the next train. You just wait another 3 months and you just work on it until it is done. And a lot of other people have done the same thing. Like some of the games that I mentioned earlier, they were multiple season projects. So that was the first time, because I was used to game jams where it was like, you missed the 48-hour mark, you're done. Bye-bye, goodbye. So to be in a new group where the only consequence is, all right, you just try again in 3 months, it was a very different feeling. And I was like, oh, that's kind of why I super like Tiny Mask games. There's an emphasis, small releases, less scope creep. They have frequent meetings, like they meet up, they have like lunch every like Tuesday at noon, so if you're working from home, hey, there you go. But they have meetings in the evenings, a little bit less frequently, but still frequently enough to kind of keep it in your mind about it. So it's very nice. A reliable schedule of 3 months, easier than a game jam. So it is just enough pressure to start, but just relaxed enough to still feel fun. And it is the exact niche that I needed. So this presentation was mostly for me, but it's also for anyone else here in this group, where if you're trying to get into games, but you're putting all of this unnecessary pressure on yourself to, make this absolute masterpiece where it has to be perfect, or it has to be made lightning fast. If you're that kind of person, then allow me to reintroduce myself. Hi, I'm Shane, and I make tiny games. And now, a teaser for Death in D minor. Let's see if the video actually loads. How do I do this?
You can use the mouse. It's like,
Or you can just use the mouse. Is it gonna...
oh wait, I'm sorry. I waited for the computer. I'm so sorry.
Beautiful.
Wait 1 second. Yeah, I didn't want random things playing. Sorry.
We stand in anticipation. Whatever will it sound like? There we go. And now a teaser.
Wait, you may need to back into that.
Nice.
Click back to the tab, maybe.
On the tab?
Well, yeah.
There we go.
Oh, Reginald, your music once again astounding. Oh, Martina, that's easy to do when I have my favorite muse with me. Oh, you flatter me. Your musical skill is simply to die for. Do you hear something, sweet cheese?
And you'll have to play the game once it releases in September to solve that mystery. And yes, all the names are rat puns. Thank you all so much. And that is that. Thank you very much. So, if anyone has any questions, yes?
When you say it's going to release, what platforms are you releasing the game on?
It's going to be on itch.io, which I have a convenient little QR code for right there, if you want to give it a follow. Anyone else? Okie dokie then. Thank you very much.
All right. Hey everyone. So for my presentation, I'm going to be talking about running a team of 20 plus people, which is a lot for an indie starting off. And yeah, more about me is my name is Jay. I use he/him pronouns. I'm the co-founder of Studio Blue Jay and also happen to be the marketing director. producer and also do some 2D art and animation. I'm 27 years old, and I like to be in like a lot of local game dev events, so you'll find me around everywhere. And eventually, I want to explore some more game dev events in the West Coast and more. Things about me, I guess a little bit ironic about being in a huge crowd is I have a social anxiety disorder, and I happen to be neurodivergent. So sometimes I have like communication struggles, and it took a lot of like exposure therapy to try to get myself out there. And if you're running a team, at the minimum you really need like one programmer and one artist when you're doing a very small game. And that's what I did for my very first game when I started off. Me and a former colleague of mine worked on a side-scrolling bird game. And nowadays, I'm working on a game with a larger team that requires programmers, artists, writers, audio people, designers, and marketing online. Because you're not just like making the game function and having all the awesome visuals, you're also having like writing, a story, a narrative design, well-crafted audio, music for a rhythm game, design for the levels to flow together, and marketing to be able to show off your game to the world. And that's why I have our Ghost Jukebox, which is Studio Blue Jay's current project. So, limits to running a team by myself. I'm just going to reference Dungeons & Dragons as if I'm being a producer, similar to being a GM or a DM for me. I feel like when I'm in Dungeons & Dragons, the max I get to the table feels like too busy is about 6 to 8 people in my own personal experience. And you want to make sure like each person gets their time to shine within the hour or during the hours of the gaming session. Kind of like within a meeting, you want to make sure like people get their chance to speak, bring up what they want to talk about, being able to say what they want to say. And this is my progression from like starting to like my very beginning as a game developer 8 years ago, being 2 friends working on a side-scrolling game, to a team of 20 plus and more people working on our project Ghost Jukebox. And having team leads helps, especially in a large team. And it kind of divides up the work of managing a lot of people. I guess in a way the team leads are also like miniature like producers themselves. So like something like this in which like co-founders and producer or like producers, when I do have like additional producers. And then we have like our team leads of each departmental team under them, and then each discipline has like their own like team or people to manage. Although like I'm aware like these things can be like different for some teams where like we have like for example a writer who's also a marketer that can split time between 2 different teams, or someone who does programming and game design that can also be split between 2 teams. To help out with like managing a large team, we usually have different sorts of meetings. We have our all hands for like meetings with the host studio that also happen to be our sprints. I feel like it's very beneficial for all, or at least most of the members, to be able to meet each other, because we want to be able to have like a cohesive community when forming a game together. And having that element of connectiveness is important if you want like people to be able to like function together, work together. And the sprints we do happen bi-weekly. Usually they take an hour and a half. The first 15-30 minutes are for people gathering around and bringing up any topics that we need the whole team to know. And for the sprints themselves, we divide up the slides into like each department. So each department has 10 minutes to talk about the slide. So we have 6 teams: programming, art, writing, audio, design, and marketing, which 10 minutes each, 6 teams adds up to an hour. And then we have our team lead meetings, where all the team leads and producer meets up to chat about what happens within the team. overall decisions that are made about the game's development and the studio. This meeting happens weekly, and this information that we chat about generally trickles down into like the departmental team meetings. So for the departmental team meetings themselves, they also happen weekly within their own team. So each team lead generally has their own style of running their team, such as the programming team going over code and assigning tasks on separate systems they're working on. The art team doing awesome feedback and critiques. Writing team having breakout sessions where they write together. Audio team listening to sound effects and music they've worked on. These are some examples. We also have one-on-one meetings as needed to help anyone who's like falling behind, need to catch up, or if we need to like talk to each other or a particular person about anything important about the game. For example, like the design lead talking to the writing lead about how a change in the design of a level might affect how the writing is written about the level progressing. And some important things about running a large team is being on the same page, because it's kind of like a game of like telephone where you tell information from one person that ends up being carried to another person, and sometimes that information may be deleted over time. So you want to make sure things like, for example, if recently in our studio we were deciding if recurring characters in our game should have 2 levels based on each character or 3 levels based on each character. And these interconnected decisions, such as the design of the game, would impact different parts of the game and different roles in different departments, such as the game systems, how much art is drawn of each character, how are things written, how much music should we have, and etc. And along with having to be on the same page, we want to have clear expectations, goals, and milestones with the timeline and tasks, and make sure that we're interpreting things in the same direction, reaching the same goal. And the way we achieve them is having some sort of way, like a project management board. This can be Trello, Jira, Miro. Our team uses Codecks, which was introduced to us by a connection from Germany who was developing a project management board that's easier for game devs, that's kind of in the middle of complexity between something like as simple as Trello, but also like not as complex as like Jira, while having like a playing card aesthetic that's focused on game devs. And this is an example of our Codecks board, which is each team and also project management having their own deck of cards. And these deck of cards are separated into like different tasks for each team to do. Regular feedback is also very, very important. I want to mention that like people are doing an awesome job where things are doing well, and critique on things that can improve if needed. Because if you don't give people feedback, people might worry if they're doing well or what if they're doing a bad job. So to ease those worries that people might have, it's always good to let people know like what's going on and how they're doing. And also like celebrating everyone's hard work. It's really important for people to feel like what they've done is valued, especially when they've taken a lot of time and energy and effort to do what they have to do. And everyone is amazing. And you also want to acknowledge everyone's ideas, as everyone is part of the project. Even if like not all the ideas make it in, you want to like acknowledge to like include everyone, because we don't want to like be like, oh yeah, you're not a part of the team. But yeah, these things are like very, very important to have within a large team. And also just having fun. So we've been planning to have more monthly get-togethers starting over the summer, and celebrating after events. We had a team dinner during PAX East, which was really cool. I feel like having like that sort of like casual, friendly environment with your teammates is important to be able to like communicate with each other, because I always felt like having something that's more like strict feels very like putting a barrier between people. And being able to talk to each other is very important when you are managing a large team. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I really appreciate you guys all. Here are links where you can find me, as well as where you can find my studio as well, and also QR code. If anyone has any questions about running a large team, or about myself or the studio, feel free to ask. Yes?
Yeah, I was curious about Codecks. Can you just talk briefly about like what you feel the strengths of it are? I haven't been so curious.
I feel like the strengths of it, for me personally, I always felt like it felt like when I was using like Trello, like sometimes I want like more layers of like, oh, this task is a part of like another task, where like in Codecks you can make like card decks within your category, and you can say like, oh, these tasks like go together in a group. So it'd be like, for example, in an art task, let's say you're making the main menu. Different types of things that go to the main menu are like, you need to make the buttons, and you need to do the background art, and you need to do the animation if the main menu is animated, and that goes into like the same deck. Hope I'm explaining this like sufficiently. But also like it's not as like complex as Jira, because Jira has like so many functions that sometimes I don't use.
Can you nest the decks within each other?
I believe, go back, yeah, they can be like, you can have like several different decks of like similar roles, such as programming related decks being in like the programming category, and art decks being like in the art category. Yeah.
It's impressive that you can manage to keep 18 people below you said about paying anybody a salary. How do you evaluate whether when you're considering taking somebody on, whether they'd be a good fit for you and your team or not?
Oh, before we get someone on, generally we have an interview with them, with like one or two people to figure out like if their thoughts are right for the team, if we have like a personality match. Just to like get to know the person as a person, rather than like, oh, we're adding on someone as like this role, or like, oh, we need programming, but we want to see people as people and how they fit into our team. Yep.
Do you find it more beneficial to employ several task management programs, or try to limit the amount? We talk about Trello, Jira, Mira, and Codecks. Do you find it better to have multiple, or just a few?
I find it better to have few, like just speaking of specifically, just one task management board, because I feel like once we get to several project management boards, we get to the point where like some people would use like, I had this problem when I was in grad school, but I was using like Trello and Miro, and some people would like add stuff to Trello, and then some people would add stuff to Miro, and then like people wouldn't look at both, and then it creates this like this communication of like, oh, which one of the project management boards are we supposed to look at, and like some tasks being on one board but not the other, and everything kind of just gets like lost in the mix.
Thank you.
more than the other?
I guess in terms of like, even like in terms of like, oh, if we need like more programmers, more designers, or we need like more so like, oh, like more specific aspects like communication or like management.
In all.
I feel like it's in terms of like specific things, like communication and management, it's hard to say because we end up like fitting into our own niches within like this pyramid of like putting tasks together, putting the team together. But in terms of like roles like programming, art, writing, design, etc. I also felt like we like programming is something that we often look for. Because our studio is like currently volunteer based, we all have like part-time jobs on the side to like make rent and get groceries. And software engineering is like a lot as a day job, and programming on the side is a lot. But generally, we work out, and it usually goes well.
All right, my name is Matthew, and my developer studio is Hither Games, and this talk is on how I developed 4 indie detective video games in 4 years, or 5 in 4 years, and just kind of the whole adventure of what that was like. So before Murderers Game Over, which is the name of my series, if I say MIGO, it's short for Murderers Game Over, MIGO. In 2021, I had past experience as a game developer in other roles. I kind of started during the pandemic, like a lot of people maybe. I made a small, kind of beginner-ish RPG and got mixed feedback, both fair and ridiculous. Some of the feedback was, yeah, you're a newbie. You made some newbie mistakes. And some of it was like, why isn't this game as good as, Baldur's Gate 3 with, why did your $5 game you made in your spare time have all the features of something that's you made with just ridiculous nonsense? So I got kind of a bad taste of the RPG fandom community based on that. I was an avid mystery fan in terms of what I like to read and consume in my spare time. At the time, mystery felt like an underserved game genre. And there weren't really any mysteries that had a whole lot of exploration mechanics. There was a lot of kind of point and click, solve this puzzle, find something on the ground. But I wanted to do something with exploration, kind of inspired by Clue, where you can find. I want to find secret passages. I want to explore the estate and just do that kind of big world kind of discovery was something that was important to me. So it's kind of like I want to make a murder, an RPG that's a murder mystery is kind of the way I was thinking about it at the time. So here's some of my early RPGs, a lot of stock art. And there's some things I think I did well, but there's a lot that was easy to criticize, and like some of the criticism was just nonsense too. So Murderers Game Over, the first game, it's the idea was to make a murder mystery franchise where each game is kind of like 2 or 3 hours, each is kind of like the same time you could watch, like Knives Out or whatever, pick your murder mystery film. You can play a game in an evening and enjoy it. Emphasis on being efficiency as a developer. I've worked for a lot of other developers that didn't finish their products even sometimes when they had lots of money. I was at MIT down the street years ago when Kurt Schilling got up on stage and said, the one thing my wife doesn't want to do when I retire from the Red Sox is to make this big hulking MMO RPG. So sure enough, that was what I'm going to do. And then we all know how that went. So that kind of took stuff like that to heart. I'm self-financed. Crowdfunding, not really my bag. I just want to make something small enough I can afford to make it. The games are playable in any order. It's not like you got to go, if you want to play the later one, you got to do all this homework first. You can go jump in whenever you want or not and play them in any order. It's kind of like if you read Sherlock Holmes books or whatever, you can read them in any order. It doesn't really matter if you have prior exposure to it before or not. And when I started, I was working with a small publisher who was a friend of a friend that had a lot of experience publishing game on Steam and other platforms. So the first game creatively is you explore a spooky crime scene based on a real place, and I'll show you. These are kind of the core mechanics of the series. You talk to suspects, you find clues. Can everybody hear? You're going to be a little louder. Okay, good. A little louder. Okay. You find clues, and then at the end you explain what happened. You get that kind of part of their scene where the detective He says, you were lying to me, and here's how I know why, and you have that kind of scene, like in Agatha Christie. You switch between two characters, which are a detective and a dog. I didn't want to give the detective some long-winded personality, so look, I'll just give him a dog, and just between them, that's the personality. I had this kind of treasure hunt riddle mini game. It became kind of a staple of my series. Then I had a really well-made map, which was just some beginner's luck. It just the way the map turned out to be, make it really easy for players to enjoy and pick up on. So that was something I did well in the first one. So here's this haunted castle in Vermont I went to. It was inspired the setting for my game. This is a real place you can go to in Proctor, Vermont. I've been there a couple times. It's awesome. You want to go to a haunted castle? That's what it looks like. And here's kind of that idea, kind of inspired by my first game takes place at a haunted castle in Vermont. So here's kind of the same thing. You're exploring the state grounds of this castle. And the reason it was called Murderer's Game Over is the murder victim in the first game was the game designer, and the initials are a hint for who it could be inspired by. I'm not going to tell you. With that guy lying on the ground. And so you talk to people, you explore. And it did surprisingly well, especially compared to my first game on my kind of low expectations I had going into it. I actually had super fans, one in France and one in China that were like, I love your game so much, I'm going to do this volunteer translation of your game. It's pretty long in terms of word count, and just give this to you as a volunteer. So that was amazing. Made me feel like I was on something. The biggest critique is it was short and simple. That's fine. I meant it to be a short game by design, so okay. And it impressed Rattlelike Games, that is a console port publisher that wanted to do a console port of the game, and then others subsequently. So I started working on the second one. One feature I wanted to have I didn't do in the first one was this Scooby-Doo inspired ghost chase where I have all this big exploration area that you're exploring, and suddenly the screen goes black, the music gets scary, and the Scooby-Doo-esque ghost, guy in a costume, old man Withers in a costume chases you around, and you got to run away and get out of sight before you can start looking for clues and do normal detection stuff again. So that was a feature I wanted to add. It was important to me with the whole exploration thing. I spent a lot of time researching local ghost towns because I want to have a big open space where the ghost could go chase people around. I had some other experimental features like a big fest quest. There was a metal detector mini game. There was a timed level, etc. The ending of the first one I think is probably the best ending of any of the games. You definitely feel like you're in Scooby-Doo land, where the villain, unmask the villain, and I'm rich and I got a lawyer, and I'm gonna, the conflict is done well, still very enjoyable. I think that's something I did well. This is a ghost town, Massachusetts. This is called Dogtown. It's up on Cape Ann, and there were witches that lived here. There were all kinds of spooky stuff that happened here. But this is one of the local ghost towns I visited that inspired it. And here's some Scooby-Doo-esque kind of hologram stuff like that you see in the game. Here's kind of a little bit of the early ghost chase mechanic where you got somebody in this disguised as evil colonial dude that's up to no good, and you want to escape before you can go back to solving the mystery. So I got a small publisher advance this time because the first one did well, which led to me working faster. I definitely, even though it was relatively small money, it was still enough for me to look, okay, this publisher is believing in stuff, but they're giving me money up front to do this, and that's motivating me to feel like they give a crap, and therefore I give a crap, and I want to give them what I owe them. So I work faster. The ghost chase feature was polarizing because some people not everybody likes having to drop everything and get chased around by a spooky ghost monster. So it was kind of a polarizing feature. People either liked it or didn't. And the publisher greenlit the third game. And the general response is if you like the first one, then you like this too. So I started working on the third one, and the publisher, the big conversation was just how do we make this look prettier? You're more experienced now. How do we make this art better? I had gone to the Alps in Italy, and they wanted to have a different kind of environment, so we had this kind of snowy mountainous environment. I had been to the Alps, so I had it set inspired by a place I visited. And then it was kind of your cabin on top of a mountain, snowed in. A lot of experimenting with there's more enclosed space. It's not such a big world. So what do you do with it? And one of the answers I had was this disguise mechanic, and the disguise mechanic ended up being a pain in the butt because every time you dress up in your costume, you've got to sanitize the dialogue. So if you talk to somebody in the costume and say, "Hey, why are you wearing that costume? You're an idiot," or whatever, and that just ended up being a lot of extra writing and frustration, and not something I wanted to do again. I didn't realize how much it would be. So this cover is based on when I was actually here. This is a photograph that either I took or a family member took of this Alpine hotel in Italy. Looks a little prettier. So the publisher, so before the launch happens, the publisher drama begins. We're on good terms. It's not like anything bad happened with me. Basically, they had other things with their business weren't going so well, and that was causing them to have to go back on some promises and just cause some issues that caused my production rate to slow down and experience some burnout. And like I said, the enclosed space concept kind of made the game feel more like a visual novel, for those who know what that is, more than an RPG, because there's less walking around and a lot more text. So it still did well. I started working on the fourth one. The big conversation in pre-production with the publisher this time was a concern about was about streamers spoiling so-called linear games, because if somebody watches a video and the story is the same, then they're not going to want to. They may not want to play it and see the story they just watched. So how do we make these games kind of more open world, more streamer friendly? And then I want to improve the ghost chase and also make it an optional feature where you can either opt in or opt out of getting chased around by a ghost or not, but it's also just more slick. And then I kind of wanted to combine my favorite elements of all three of the first games. So here's a spooky cemetery I visited. This is probably the spookiest cemetery I've ever been to. This is in the Berkshires. I wouldn't want to be in there at night because there's probably H.P. Lovecraft rituals or something like that, but watch out. Towards some Victorian mansions like that, supposedly haunted places like that, to get some sense of what to make it look like. Same thing, you find clues with your dog who's named Cleo. And here's kind of the ghost chase where the screen gets dark, the music gets spooky, and you get chased around by this ghost. It's just a little more slick than it was in the past. So before I can launch the game, the publisher goes out of business. We're still on good terms. I'll probably see them visiting a city they live in, later this year, and there's no bad blood or anything like that. So I had to make the monumental decision of, do I publish my own or do I look for another publisher? And it basically, one, it slowed down the release, and two, it basically came down to, rather like a game, the company that does the console port said, we still want to port your games even if you don't have another publisher. And that to me was a better value than some other publisher, and I kind of done this before and learned some of the ropes, seeing what they did. So I had a couple of conversations with different publishers. Nothing that was especially promising, and elected to go on my own. The game won a prize at Boston Fig, which led to a lot of local press. The game was set in the Berkshires, and got a piece in Berkshire Magazine, and then their local newspaper and their website. All the local journalists loved it. So that was really cool. However, none of that local PR coolness did anything with Steam. I was hoping, all these cool accolades would help Steam take it to the next level. Nothing like that ever happened, which was frustrating for me. So now we're started working on the fifth one. Without a publisher, I picked a concept that my old publisher didn't like, because I was like, okay, now I can spend the rest of my life making pitch decks and trying to do that whole thing. But if I wanted to do something I want, being totally independent, this is the time to do it. And there's more kind of urban spaces. A lot of the earlier games are kind of in rural settings. This is more of you're in this high-rise hotel that's haunted and haunted or whatever, and exploring there with elevators and things like that. There's an elevator mini game. So that's something that's new. There's Japanese mystery influences. One of my favorite series is this manga series called the Kendaichi Case Files. If anybody has heard of that, it's something I really like very much, and kind of use what I like about that to influence my rating in this, and then basically refine it based on what people were thought of the fourth game and other earlier games. Like I said, I wanted to build this high-rise hotel. This is the kind of space I was looking at. And here's some early screenshots where you can see I'm trying to replicate the kind of feeling that you're in a building like that. It's night and it's spooky. More of that kind of stuff. So the launch is going to be later this year. It's in alpha now. And I guess the way I feel now is there's a sense of improvement, accomplishment from each game. Has some things that are more polished than the last. I think I've proved I'm very consistent in terms of being able to get these things done and finish my projects and not run into skill creep and other things people talked about. I've got a small but loyal following. It's definitely not a world beater. I don't think mysteries are as underserved as a genre now as they were a few years ago. It definitely feels like there's a lot more of them popping up and more money going into them, and it's less of I'm on the outskirts now. And I feel like, and I've gotten a couple other devs that say, hey, I like your games and you've inspired me, so that's kind of come full circle and felt good for me. I definitely love the project, but I'm also experiencing burnout because I've just made 5 of these in 4 years, and on top of working other jobs and other things that I do to make money. And I'm kind of like, okay, during the pandemic this was great, but I don't know that I have to make 700 of these games before I die or anything like that. So I'm definitely experiencing burnout, even though I'm enjoying it. And next, I'm gonna keep monetizing the series. I'll have 5 of them soon, and then hopefully that'll open up some more opportunities. Definitely want to relax and pursue other interests because I've worked really hard at this for a few years now, and have some ideas about the next case. But I'm one, still trying to finish the project I'm on now, and 2, have other ambitions, and I'm not looking, unless something hits me that's like, oh my god, I've got to drop everything and make this game because the story is just so cool. I'm not like that hungry to go. Okay, I'm not that gung ho about trying to start right away or anytime soon. So that's kind of where I am now, and that's what it's been like making 5 indie mysteries in 4 years. So thank you. Questions at this time? I saw your hand first up.
So are all these games just on Steam?
They're on the first 3 are on consoles, PlayStation, Xbox, Switch. The 4th one is just on Steam and GOG and itch. The 5th one is not released yet. If that answers your question.
Have you seen like success porting it? Like has that been beneficial?
Success with what?
With porting it.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's been good.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes.
So what do you find is like the main differences between having to self-publish your game versus like trying to like have a publisher for the game?
Okay, my hot take right now on publishing, because when I was looking for another publisher, I had contacted some publishers I was interested in, and they're like, guess what, a month ago we went out of business and laid off 100 people because we're just not making the money we used to, and those kinds of crazy conversations. My hot take, and this might be 6 months ago, so I don't know how much it is now because I'm not thinking about it as much, but my take is that Steam has, does what they want with their platform. They're going to favor some games, and the free publicity that Steam gives the games that they choose to give their publicity to is worth more than the paid advertising that any publisher can do, and that's causing a lot of harm to a lot of small publishers. And one of the reasons kind of the industry's in the state is that's my perception anyway. If that answers your question. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that in one of your games there's a chase sequence that is optional. I'm curious how that works.
So you just towards the beginning of the game you get your scene with the ghost that says, ha ha ha, watch out detective, I'm hiding in the shadows or whatever. And then it just says, do you want to have your ghost chase? And you get 3 different choices of modes. One of them it just gets omitted and you don't have it at all, you just explore. One of them is, and then you get like two different difficulty settings and then you get 2 different difficulty settings, then you can toggle between them. So if you play for a while, you're like, you know what, I didn't think I want to try the ghost chase, but now I'm partway in the game, you can switch to it, and you go back and forth and just pick what you like as a player. Yes.
So I have this issue that I think may speak to a lot of people in the room, where I feel like I can always pour more time into making games I want to make. But something I think is so cool about your games is that you've gone to these places in real life, and that's helped inspire your games and make these games that really speak to other people. So I'm wondering, do you feel like you've kind of figured out the balance between pouring your time into the passion of developing games versus like enjoying life and taking that as inspiration?
I think I've learned how to be an efficient indie game developer. I think I experience burnout because it's like, okay, there's all these other things I could be doing with my time. I could be going to the gym or taking a walk or pursuing some other interest in instead of making this video game, is this something I always want to be doing, yes or no? Does that answer your question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess the answer is that it's
that's kind of the eye of the beholder, whether it's good or not, I guess. Yes, sir?
You said you work in RPG Maker, is that right?
Yeah.
Do you find that it makes it easier to accomplish what you want to do, or is it ever limited? Or?
It depends on what you want. Like if you genuinely like 2D RPGs, like Chrono Triggers and like basically RPG Maker has all the tools to make Dragon Quest right out of the box. So if you like making those kinds of games, it's great. If you're trying to make a first-person shooter, there's probably better choices. There's probably better choice for engines. So it just depends on what you like to do and what your priorities are in terms of features.
How was your experience getting your game to multiple platforms?
I think you mean console versus PC?
Yeah, you said you had shipped a Switch.
Yeah. So the way it works with Rattle-like is if they liked the game, which they did, I was pretty hands off. They just basically they had the tech to do the port. I was testing it, and I was doing things to help them. But it's like a publishing split where they have the whole pipeline of doing it on the consoles and deal with the ESRB and all the other stuff that's like if they just do over and over again for everybody they work with. So for me, it was great to work with in terms of that, and they know what they do very well.
Cool. Thank you so much.
I have an idea for a game. It's the game of games, the top charter, the industry killer. There was supposed to be a noise at this, but I never put it in. This is the big one. This is the dream game that has all the features I like, none of the features I don't. It's going to be great, it's going to be fun, it's going to be cool. It is a massively multiplayer, online, real-time strategy, role-play, hack and slash, action, puzzle, horror, colony, survival craft, simulation, with blackjack and a fishing minigame. Also called that. I've been thinking about iterating on prototyping this game on and off for several years. It's changed many times. The scale's always stayed just out of reach of a solo developer with few resources. To better my chances of pulling my dream game into reality, I've come up with a few methods to lower the scope while preserving the spark that brought the idea forth in the first place. Many of you, I'm sure, have also had big games you dream of making someday. If you have such a dream project, just out of reach, I hope that the methods I've come up with will help you bring them into reality. But first, should you limit your scope? If you're making a large commercial project, absolutely. You have limited time, you have limited funds, you need to make enough to make your next game. It's optimistic, I know, but we're creatives, it's what we do. So yes, you absolutely need to limit your features so that you can release within a deadline, within a budget, and get something out there. If it's a hobby project, little more gray area here. If you want to finish it, absolutely. If you want something that you can show to your friends, that you can play at some point, then sure. If you don't care about finishing it, if you just love the creative process, if the whole point is just you like making things, I'm not the fun police. I will not stop you from making your game. So these methods are all different ways I use to filter out those features that don't serve the core experience I'm going for with my game. None of these methods are necessary to control a project size, but I've found them to be useful to limit what I make. They all exist in various forms. I did not invent any of these. We're not going to go through all of these. We're just going to go through my personal creations. And these are either things that I came up with and then found somebody online who had already done it better than me, or something that I found what someone else did and I've modified it to my purpose. Also, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I am entirely self-taught. I am a solo developer, meaning, say it with me, I am a... All right, let's get on it. First method we're going to use is the time budget. So what you do for the time budget is you have a limited amount of time to make your game. So you make a list of all of the features that you want in the game. That is everything. And you make a list of times. How much time it's going to take to put in each feature. Now, we are all, of course, very optimistic. So you need to multiply it by 3. And then you take the amount of time that you think it's going to take. I had 130 hours on here and just cut them down. Now you might notice some of these I did not end up subtracting from the total because I decided to remove them. As an example of this, I had a very, very, very large simulation I wanted to do. I wanted the full world to be one large dynamic simulation. Nations going to war with each other. Nature growing and causing beasts to appear at different strengths based upon how desolate the region is. I attempted it. It took months. I ended up throwing everything out. The second time I did it, I wrote the full feature list, and I ended up realizing for this simulation, I'm just trying to learn about how to control this setting. I don't need entire armies of soldiers running around. I can change the armies, and I am expecting this to take a second to load. You can do it. I believe in you. I ended up replacing all of the armies of thousands of troops with just these individual markers for each army with values showing how many troops they had, and ended up with a full simulation of exactly what I was looking for, only a week past the schedule that I had set for myself, which was about a month. The second method we're going to go over is the 2 notebooks method. I think we all know the first notebook because most of us will have one. It's the one that you use to take notes while you're making your game. It is, it's the list that you're going to have of all of the features that you want. It's going to be your development notes, your testing notes, musings on it, notes you get from the community, important information. The second notebook is all of the nonsense that you don't need to finish your game. It's stuff that you should not be doing right now. It's stuff that you want in it, but you really don't have the time for it. And possibly DLC material if you want. You can go visit again after the fact. In my case, I had an idea to put a library in each major city in the game. Each library was going to have a ton of books that players could read. There were going to be lore books. There was going to be strategy guides. There was going to be the entire library of Project Gutenberg, which is 60,000 books. I have no idea how I would do this. This is not something that serves the core premise of the game. It would take way too long to do. So I took notes on it in a separate notebook away from the main one so that I don't think about this over time. It's just something that I can have, so if I finish the game and I'm looking for more stuff to add to it, or if another feature doesn't work and I need something to fill it out, I have this. Lastly is the scene method. Think of your game. Think of all the features that are going to be in it. Okay, now throw all those thoughts out. Think of 1 minute. Think of one scene, one thing that you want the players to experience. What do you want them to see? What do you want them to feel? What do you want them to talk about with their friends after they play your game? You're going to build an experience that just covers that 1 minute, just the features that are the core experience of what you want your game to be. In my case, for my next probably final prototype, it's going to be a little hunting sim. You go out, you get a quest to hunt down some wolves, to cull their population. They're starting to attack villagers, something like that. And you go out, you follow the trail of the wolves into the woods. Through the woods, maybe you fight a couple of them, and you end up in a clearing. And there is a battle going on in that clearing. Hundreds of soldiers charging at each other. Now, what's necessary to make that? Well, you don't really need a full inventory system because you just have arrows, maybe you have a couple health potions, maybe some wolf pelts that you collect along the way. So you don't need the full inventory system, you just need an item counter. You don't need a full quest system because there's only one quest. So just the basic setup for that. You don't need a full battle AI set so that the armies move with tactics. You just need a bunch of guys to charge at each other and start killing each other. When you make that, you can show it to your friends. You can show it to your relatives. You can show it to random people on the street. and you get an idea from their input of what features will best serve the game's core experience. And from that, you can then take this and then expand it to add those features in. And by the end of it, you have a finished game. I had a whole speech at the end, but I lost it, so. Questions? Chris?
What was like the gist of that hidden speech that was lost?
Huh?
TLDR. What was the gist of the missing speech?
Generally, I hope that these were helpful to you. They're useful to me. Yeah, basically it. Chris?
Do you ever take ideas from the second notebook, or is it just a graveyard for that?
So it's mostly a graveyard because usually when you go back and look at those ideas, you'll realize they were terrible on second viewing. But sometimes you realize that there's something really good about them, and if there is time to add that in, then yeah, definitely you can pull it in. Jay?
Okay, 2 questions. Number 1, does it actually take 69 hours to implement a sexy librarian?
Yes.
And second question is, what's the average percentage of time that you end up finding good ideas after second worship, notebooks stuff?
Vast majority of it ends up getting thrown out. It usually depends on if you find features in the main game that just don't work and you need something to go in that place. But I'd say half of them get revisited, if not in the game itself, then in a separate game where it would be a cool feature to have. It's really good for ideation for your next game too.
I might have missed it. So are you using all of these different concepts in all of the games that you're developing, or the game that you're developing, or is it kind of this one works for this, maybe I'll do 2 notebooks and then seeing maybe next project?
Usually 2 notebooks works best when you're in the middle of development, whereas the scene method works best at the very, very start of development, and the timeline, same, start.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Next question? Saw someone in the back. No? Okay.
Cool. Sweet. Thank you.
So I'm going to be talking about rebuilding Salem, creating a Salem-Inspired game environment. Also, remember this picture. It is important. So, next slide. About me. I'm Isabelle. I recently graduated from Lesley University with my BFA in Game Art and Virtual Production, where I did this project. I'm now at Tufts doing my master's, studying how game technologies can be used in fine art classrooms. So lots of different stuff. For my game work, I'm an environment artist / level designer. I've been straying into it recently. I love to tell stories, build immersive worlds, and I'm currently at Studio Blue Jay working on our game Ghost Jukebox. So, what is Inheritance? I'll be calling this game Inheritance throughout the presentation. This is our junior and senior capstone. So across 2 semesters, we had 20 plus students working on this game. We actually got to have students from Berkeley work on our soundtrack. So we had a lot of students involved with this. But I was the primary environment artist, and I was also the art lead and one of the people who pitched this game. So Inheritance is I call it a feminist fighting game. I don't like fighting games, but my friend convinced me to co-pitch a fighting game with him, and we wanted to incorporate in the persecution of women, specifically witches, throughout history, through the lens of a modern-day fighting game. So we have 2 main environments I'm going to be talking about, both heavily inspired by my one trip to Salem and a single photo that I took, and kind of how we built those environments and what I learned from revisiting Salem. Also, the project debuted at PAX East 2025. You might have seen our old gaming cabinet at our PAX booth. So, wrong way. First, who here has been to Salem? Salem, Mass specifically. Almost everyone. Salem is an amazing place, and it generally is thought of looking like this. These 2 images, very Halloween themed, very crowded, and very atmospheric. I went to Salem in August, and I saw this. Not at all like the pictures you saw before. And I saw abandoned streets, abandoned malls, and just this beautiful scenery that felt like it had echoes of people being there without actually being there. And you still have the same spooky buildings, you still have the same streets, but they just felt empty and kind of more spooky than they were before. So I had to then come into my the beginning of my senior year, and we had to pitch a game. I had no clue what I was pitching. I had just done this trip with my family, and I saw this picture and was going through my what I call feminist horror phase, and was watching lots of movies at that time. So I pulled from what I loved, and I pulled from media that inspired me, and I ended up pitching Inheritance. It went through a couple of iterations to become a fighting game, and I wanted to pull from this almost echoing feeling of Salem in its off-season, while also pulling from my own childhood of watching Hocus Pocus and new films like WandaVision that have this very spooky feel, and I ended up calling it, I'm not sure if this is an actual thing, nostalgic capitalism. Almost that capitalism that you grew up with, the Halloween commercials and Halloween decorations you'd see in stores. So, after I pitched the game and my class thankfully agreed to all work on it, I then had to create the narrative. This was something that I was super new at doing, and I really had to figure out, well, what did I like about Salem, and how could I make a story that would make sense? In a fighting game, we didn't really have the opportunity, especially as a student game, to make a full narrative, so I had to figure out what was the most important part of the narrative, and how could I share that in the environments I created. So I started looking at a couple spooky pieces. I don't know if anyone has been to this, I think it's like a animatronic museum. You walk through with a little torch, and it's such a strange place because you have all of these wax figures and it feels very old while also having like brand new technology. You also have all of these old houses just planted in the middle of the town. So what resulted is a story where witches who were once persecuted and killed because of their use of magic, their spirits would be coming back and fighting against the people who once persecuted them in the borders of this town. So it allowed me to explore the history of a town inspired by Salem, while also not having the bounds of it being based on a real place. After I had the narrative, I had to then plan the environments, which was actually difficult because I had never worked in a fighting game before, and I had to figure out how can I make the player feel like they're in a space, and a space that feels like Salem without actually being Salem, in Unreal Engine. So this is kind of a little bit of a process. Up here you'll see the mall environment that I'll talk about a little bit later. This one was the problem child. Then we have the seaside environment, we've been calling it. So I started with a sketch. I come from a fine arts background, so for me, being able to sketch something helped me to see the space, and also allowed me to make very fast changes. Then I started with a blockout. I was able to go in and use reference photos, which I'll show later, and I also had a mood board. I was very inspired by Hocus Pocus and practical magic in the aesthetics. And I was able to really get a feel of the space. The town is supposed to be set also in the 90s, so you have a little bit more of that nostalgic capitalism there coming out in like tacky Halloween commercials, things like that. Then I had to go and look through my photos. I am a chronic photo collector. I have over 70,000 photos on my phone, so I had to go through all of them and find the ones that I wanted to pull from. This is a process, and this is where I learned the most about collecting reference images for environments. If you're an environment artist, you'll hear people talk about like taking photos of environments and really understanding the space. But this was something that I really had to learn in this project. So I definitely started with the mall, and I thought this will be super easy. It's a mall, everyone walks through a mall. It's an open space, it has shops, it has a very airy feel, but we also want it to feel abandoned. It's supposed to look like Halloween when it maybe isn't Halloween. It should feel like people should be there, but they're not. And I pulled a lot from Witch City Mall, which you'll see here, and just these kind of tacky animatronics everywhere. I loved all of the different posters, and this hallway was a big pull, this kind of atmospheric look, and also the hollowness present. And this is what the final environment ended up being. I did have a first iteration, which I'll show a little bit later, that completely flopped, and this is where I had to learn to go back and actually visit the site and understand what a space felt like, as opposed to kind of my first interpretation. Then we have the seaside. This was the one that I enjoyed most because I love old houses. I love wood grain patterns. I love also anything in nature. So I was able to pull a lot from House of the Seven Gables, and I believe this is which house. The House of the Seven Gables has this beautiful feel where it's right by the ocean, so you're able to see it, but it's also an outdoor museum. So navigating through it feels a little bit different than a lot of old houses that will generally be on the side of a road or will kind of be off of the beaten path a little bit. So this had a really beautiful kind of way of going through it. So I was able to build this little house here, and with the help of my team, we ended up planning out the space that allowed the player to kind of traverse through what felt like an outdoor museum without making them feel like they were confined in an environment. And we also were able to include some space. I was really inspired by this little pier over here, which if you've ever been to the House of the Seven Gables, it's a little bit hidden. Highly recommend going over. It's such a beautiful feel, and it also added some needed depth. So, building the space. I will always preach for modular kits. I love modular wall kits, and this was the biggest thing in helping me be able to iterate upon the environment, especially when I realized I needed to make changes. I was working on a student team, so I was learning, and everyone else around me was also learning, so I needed to be able to easily change the art that I had created and build upon it. This is where I was able to take these kits and iterate, and I was also able to build different things and hand them to programmers, hand them to designers, and allow them to also work with it, knowing that I had already done my piece and it would fit the environment that I was building. Revisiting Salem, this is where the learning piece comes in. This is what the mall looked like before. It was not what we wanted. I had no clue what I wanted to do with the mall. I had a single reference image that I was really working off of, and I felt like the mall needed to be a very concrete space, and it didn't have a sense of depth. And the environment wasn't feeling quite right. So we had a bit of a glow up. Luckily, Salem is close, so we were super lucky in being able to revisit it. And me and my team went, and I took photos of everything. You'll see on the next slide, I photographed the floor. I photographed the walls. I photographed the doors. I took photos of textures. I went everywhere. And this is what I really missed in the first piece of my kind of research, and something that I'd recommend people do. Again, if you're an environment artist, you'll hear this over and over again. Taking photos of everything, and I was able to really understand both the space, but also how it functions and how the age affected the layout. So I was able to go into a lot of spooky shops, and as you'll see on the previous slide, we have a lot of different things for sale. These malls are still full, even when it's off season. We went in February for the second time, so there was snow everywhere. No one was there. All of these stalls and all of these stores are still open. They're still selling things, which makes sense, but you wouldn't think when you're generally thinking about Salem and its tourist season. So I was able to go through and rebuild everything. The final environments ended up feeling a lot more like Salem, while also being able to kind of have their own feel and their own emotion. Definitely not perfect in any means, but I learned a lot being able to revisit a location, and it made me really reanalyze why I was creating an environment and how to look at environments critically in a way that I hadn't thought before. And that is it. Oh, and last but not least, why does this matter? If you're working on a game environment, take photos of small things. Not something that I ever would have thought of until I actually had to go through the process, but these small details ended up mattering the most to me and allowed me to communicate with my team small references of materials or small pieces of damage or small textures that I wanted to incorporate and made my space feel more alive. Again, well, it's not perfect and I still have a lot to learn. This was an amazing experience, especially with the place being so close and my team being so enthusiastic and willing to help me. It was just an amazing thing that I was able to do. And that is it. Yes.
So one thing I noticed there's one difference I noticed between the reference photos you took and the final version of the wall scene is that the colors in the reference photos are actually quite warm in comparison. What is the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so I color grade a lot of my photos after I take them. So I was originally leaning towards a more warm aesthetic, where we ended up getting our final characters and they had a very cold aesthetic. So it was a last minute switch on my part, and it also made it feel a little bit more hollow, and it allowed the floors to feel a little bit more shiny, which is a little bit strange, but it allowed the space to feel more hollow in the end.
What asset did you find the most challenging to make for each environment?
Ooh, it's gonna sound a bit strange, but the mall wall kit, it's a very simple wall, but I redid it so many times. Because it's so simple and because it's supposed to just simply exist, you're not supposed to notice it. It was so difficult. I redid that thing so many times, and it took like a midnight session on a Discord call of me just fighting with it and realizing that I can just do a simple wall texture. I don't have to make it fancy.
I think we all have ideas about what Salem is and what to expect when you go there. I guess was there anything that surprised you once you kind of spent time to really analyze it that stood out to you or that maybe wasn't as emphasized as you might expect?
Yeah, I think for me the fact that Salem is stagnant just year round. It's such a weird concept. I come from a rural New Hampshire town where we have different seasons, and every environment and every season has a new kind of feel to it, so that it feels like my town is constantly changing. Every time I went back to Salem, it felt the exact same, minus the weather. So it was a very strange thing and something that I wanted to at least echo in my own environments.
First off, I always say I love the reference to Louis Fortune. Awesome piece of media. I just wanted to ask, what's your favorite part of creating all these environments?
Yeah, probably getting to work with old houses. I love architecture, and it's not something I'm particularly good at yet, but I loved being able to look at how I could recreate an old house and also the textures and colors going into it. Yeah.
What's the conclusion of your project and how close are you?
Yeah, so we actually debuted at PAX, and because all of us graduated, we're actually done. So it's a small, almost vertical slice, because we had the year to work on it, and it was a kind of capstone game. We have a finished kind of game loop, and you can essentially play through the environments in the fighting game, and that's it. We're not technically able to keep working on it after we graduate, so we might want to revisit it in the future, but for right now, it's kind of finished and may be released to Steam, I think, within the next year.
Were there any settings that you wanted to use that didn't end up making it in the final product?
Yes, quite a few. We had a street view. There's this amazing side street in Salem right off of the main walkway, and it has this old church at the end, and it's such a beautiful space that I really wanted to build, and I was very tempted to pull an all-nighter at the very end and try to make it, but my mental health would not let me, so that was a major one. I also loved the graveyard a lot, and while it would be a really cool environment, it wasn't super interesting in the way that I had envisioned it, and for a fighting game environment, I would have wanted this space to feel a little bit different, so not something I got to explore.
I know with a lot of writing games with this kind of dynamic, they hide a lot of Easter eggs in the background. Did you get any sort of fun Easter eggs that you found while you were visiting Salem? In there?
Yes, actually. So it's going to sound a bit insane, but you'll see there's a plaque off to the side over here, and there's a plaque right here that have full paragraphs that I had written of lore. No one can read it. I am the only one who read that entire thing. We had one of our 3D artists hand type the entire thing out into Maya. No one's ever going to see it, but it was just kind of an amazing thing that I got to do.
Was there anything that you found that you had to like change from the reference to like of the environment to make gameplay better? Like, was there anything distracting elements that you changed or something like that?
Yeah, a lot with this mall. We had to tone down a lot of the depth of the mall because when the player was going back and forth, it felt a bit dizzying, and me and a lot of other players on the team had different vision issues, so we were trying to cater to make this as accessible as possible. So that was a big one. And for the seaside, the depth was really lost, so I kept having to push all of the surrounding houses back and push the water back, so really playing with the depth and how the player perceived it.
Is the camera completely static, or does it like move and follow the gameplay? So like, how did that impact the design?
Yeah, so we had an amazing kind of range. So the designers let me designate the range, but it would move back and forth to the side. You can kind of see it a bit better here, where the player could go down to one end, and we used walls or trees to block it off, so they could play back and forth. They were locked in where their characters were, but as long as their characters moved, the cameras would follow.
I'm also interested, like, so this is a fighting game, so there were, characters in this environment, and what, I guess, like, complexities were there in, like, the plane of where they fight, and, like, did you have to adjust the scale of things when you put the characters in?
Yeah, so again, I had amazing team cooperation on this. They let me build the environments. As long as they were at a reasonable scale, they would match the characters to what I built. So we put in the characters, and they actually had Sims and Marvelous Designer, so like they were full pieces that had to be scaled up to match the environments. And they were only able to access this general path area and this kind of front area. So it allowed the player to have a clear area where I had no assets besides like leaves. Nothing could touch them. And I was able to start building after, but I was also able to transition it in and out where it looked like it was still a part of the environment, if that answers your question.
Hello, so my talk is called The Lies of Burnout, Debugging Harmful Assumptions and Creating Healthy Boundaries. So about me, my name is Carolyn. I used to work at Harmonix. I've done some small indie games. Currently, I am a senior engineer at Unknown Worlds working on Subnautica 2. Some of you have probably seen the news recently, but I submitted the proposal for this talk June 24th. And then after that, a lot of stuff happened. I wish I had sound effects. But yeah, that's really kind of put the stuff I thought I learned to the test. So this is just a talk about some bad assumptions that I've noticed that I've had and other people I've worked with have had that definitely can lead to burnout, and the ways that I'm trying to combat them with boundaries. First one, crunch will be worth it later. So this is not true because, well, as has been demonstrated to me pretty clearly recently, there's a lot of outcomes that can be affected by factors outside of your control. You might have thought this was a sure thing, but it wasn't. So don't count on things. I think secondly, more practically, when you're working at an unsustainable pace and other people don't know that, they might just think, this is just how long things take. Like, they don't know that you're working weekends and that you can't keep this up forever. And also, sometimes if you're just crunching on the wrong thing, that's not helpful. Like, working on the wrong thing can be harmful to the game, can be harmful to your teammates. So some boundaries that I'm trying to set to help with this. One, I think it's really important to communicate when you're crunching. Like, tell people what you're doing and why, maybe. Like, maybe if it was because some deadline was miscommunicated or planning was bad, maybe that can actually be improved. But at the very least, they know that they can't expect this from you forever. I think it's important to define for yourself what actually justifies crunch and how long you're going to be doing it for. Like, it's not just, I feel behind, so I'm just going to work weekends forever. And I think it's good to check in, like, are the things you're spending your time on actually worth doing? Like, maybe you're fixing all these bugs, but this is just like a temp prototype. Like, is that really worth working overtime for? And yeah, like, outcomes can't really be counted on, so I think it's good as a general rule, like, don't give more than you can afford to never get back, because you're not getting it back. The next one, if I can't do it, it's because I'm not good enough. And this can be false because there's a lot of things outside of your control that can make it really hard to do good work. These are some plants that are not doing great because of their environment. It's just really normal to have limitations. Even if you're really good, there's just things that you don't know, that you're missing information, or you just don't even want to do. Like, I don't know, it's very normal. That's okay. So boundaries that I'm trying to keep for myself. I'm not always, and don't need to always be at my best. I think this is especially true for me. I tend to work in spurts of I'm really inspired and focused, and then after that I'm crashing and slowing down for a bit, and that's just how I work, and I can't expect myself to always be at 100% because I'm not. And then yeah, even if I'm doing my best and I'm really on, sometimes things are just out of my control and it makes it really hard. Maybe the team dynamics are weird, there's weird morale, direction is unclear, I'm just missing major information, so there's a lot of things that can make it hard to do good work. This one I think I've also I've experienced and also seen in my teammates. I'm the only one who can do this, so I have to do it. And this is often wrong because most of the time other people actually can do this, or at least they can help you. And I think sometimes the thing that we're actually secretly thinking is oh, I'm the only one who will do this the way that I want, or I'll do this better than other people, so I want to do this. But you have to be honest with yourself that that's what you're thinking. It's not that you actually have to do it. And yeah, I think bottlenecks are systemic failure. They're not a reason to martyr yourself. It's actually a problem. What if you're sick and now nobody knows how to do this? This is actually a problem. So boundaries. I think one, ask for help even if you don't need it. And I think the even if you don't need it part is important, because I think for me, a lot of the times I'm tempted to be oh, I can figure this out if I just, spend more time on it. But maybe that would take me 3 hours, whereas I could have asked somebody and it would take 10 minutes. And also it's just good to share, people know that you're working on stuff. I think another one is to actually explicitly allocate time for sharing your work with other people and maybe even training other people. So this can mean writing documentation, doing code reviews, sometimes passing your bugs to other people because now they have more understanding of what you're doing. If you happen to be out, they can take over a little bit. And it's just build in time to actually do that. And yeah, just being open about your limits. I think a lot of times people just don't know maybe if you're super overwhelmed and overloaded. So just like tell people like, look, I have a lot of stuff going on, probably not gonna be able to get to this, and then maybe you guys can figure something out together. Next one, I can't say no to work. And this is false because you actually can. You physically can say no to work. I think a lot of times what is actually going on is I'm afraid of what's going to happen if I say no. Like maybe they're going to think I'm unreliable or hard to work with, but it's not because I can't. And yeah, additionally, a lot of times you actually should. There's a lot of reasons why maybe someone will ask you to do something and it's actually just not a good idea. Like maybe it's not a good use of your time. You have more urgent stuff happening. Maybe it's just a bad feature. Like I don't know. Like or maybe you just can't do it actually. Like you just don't know how to, or you're missing stuff that you would need. You're not the right person. And so some boundaries I think is good to have. One, just like thinking like saying no is part of my job. Like a lot of times people don't know what your work is and why something might take a long time or be hard, or why something might be a bad idea. Like they're like, let's add multiplayer. But yeah, like people just don't know. So it's actually part of your job to communicate to them why you think this is a bad idea and to like actually set those limits, not just to, be an NPC just like taking on tasks no matter what. I think something for me that I've learned is urgency is not necessity. Sometimes it's like, the playtest build needs to be done by tomorrow, and there's this bug where this button is the wrong color, and so I need to finish it, but it's like, it's just a button. Like, that doesn't mean you have to do it. And yeah, I think lastly, just taking ownership over your own actions. Like, just thinking like, I'm ultimately the one who is choosing to work on this. I can't just like blame other people for telling me to do this thing. Like, I actually, I want to do this because of some reasons. Like maybe I really do care about people thinking that I'm good and smart, and that's why I'm agreeing to it, but I have to like own up to that. And then the last one, the game has to be good. And that's false because it actually doesn't. Like, it could be bad. Yeah. And I think more importantly, there's a lot of other things in life that can be more important than making a good game. For me, here's some hobbies that I've done this past summer that have helped me not just spend all my time working. And so some good boundaries in terms of that, yeah, like just thinking my life outside of this does actually matter. I do want to spend time on those things. The game is not the number one priority. I think another thing that I think was more subtle for me is like my experience working on this matters. So I think sometimes it's like you feel like you have to always be working on high priority, high impact stuff that will actually make the game better. But maybe there's like tech debt or just like things that you really want to do that are like really irritating you, and it would like actually just feel a lot better, and you could be way more motivated if you had some time to do those. So I think it's good to spend time on those things too. And yeah, like it is just okay. You can totally make a bad game. Like nothing will happen. Like I think we're lucky to be working on games and not like a different profession where people might die if you mess up. So it's good to like take advantage of that. And then one more thing, I guess, because of recent events, like a last lie I think I'm trying to get out of is I know how to handle burnout, so I'll never burn out again. Yeah, this is just some cute birds that lived outside of our door. But yeah, I think just recognizing that burnout isn't a personal failure that I need to like figure out how to fix. It's actually just like a signal that something here is wrong. Can't outgrow the need to rest. Like, no matter what, I do have to sleep. I think when you're hurt by something, you need time to recover, and that's normal, and you can't just like think yourself out of that. And again, understanding it doesn't mean that it can't happen again. But maybe by learning to recognize it sooner, we can, take steps to avoid it and also forgive ourselves when it does happen. That's my talk.
Perhaps this is an elephant in the room, but do you think this kind of thing would be mitigated a bit if more companies, or at least workers within companies, unionized?
I don't know if I can speak on this. but maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. Yeah.
I feel like a number of these, the importance of sharing and training coworkers on what you're working on, and saying no to things, like part of the communication challenge with money, business, decision-making folks, directors, etc. Any tips about navigating those tough conversations about making the case for, like, the mindset is great because like often the pressure, right, is the fear of, I don't know, even just thinking more like, okay, the importance of training workers, kind of like refactoring, to then be like, oh, I'd rather have these 5 features done instead of you talk to your coworkers about stuff that you already understand. That's why we have you. Any tips on navigating the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to ignore the reality of like sometimes jobs are bad and leaders are bad and like you can't actually say no without like getting fired. But I just think like sometimes people act as if that's the case when it's really not. Like I have totally seen like coworkers who will just like take on everything and they're like thinking that this person is like against them, but like when they actually talk to them, that's not true at all. So I think it's like, yeah, like maybe you can't always assume they're going to be receptive to that, but I think at least give people a chance. Like I think it's easy to get burned and then just never give people a chance, but then you just end up like martyring yourself instead of, you know, actually setting boundaries. Yeah.
Do you feel like it is easier to fall into some of these pitfalls of burnout working in a remote setting when you're kind of like, I guess speaking from personal experience, you know, sitting in your own personal office, like on your own, maybe on a Zoom call for like an hour a day?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like I work remotely, like our whole team is remote. So yeah, I think it is rough. I don't know. I have tried to just like talk more to people. Like I think that actually helps a lot. Like getting on calls and just like working together, or like maybe not working together, just getting on calls and like talking about it. I think especially in a remote setting, it's like easy to forget that other people are people with problems who care about you. Because like a lot of times it's like all of the context that you interact with them in is just like meetings, like work stuff. So I think some things that have helped, like we have like random coffees, you know, just like excuses basically just to talk about things that aren't work, and I think that's very helpful.
Do you host any sort of, or the company host any sort of social hours, and you find those to be very beneficial to helping prevent burnout?
I know we have social hours, but I don't think we actually go to them much. Like at most, I think we have play tests and like random coffees. We do like a retreat every year that helps a lot, but yeah. I do think it would help. Thank you.
Well, folks, that's the show. Thank you all so much for coming. We have the space for, like, say, another few minutes. If folks could help just take the chairs and kind of stack them over here, we should probably head out around, like, 10 minutes or so. We're going to kind of corral everyone towards...
I was asking we do a group photo before people start heading out.
Oh, sure. Yeah, before anyone heads out, if we want to do like a big old group photo.